So lads, I think this is another day of talking about the most delusional fan base in the history of sport, and this might be the worst thing I have seen. This might be the worst thing I have ever seen coming from the fan base of one A'ja Wilson.
Fans of basketball are going crazy following Jeff Teague, and Cheryl Miller just made a strong statement. Exposes A.A. Wilson's false claim. Got shut off for defeating NBA players. So quickly that everyone is discussing the. Following the basketball game, there was complete anarchy. The world.
But this conversation needs to just be stopped at this stage. It's ridiculous.
How are you all today? We are about to embark on some significant basketball drama with all the details. Sports world is giddy after A.A. Wilson's assert that you have everyone's attention yet. Cheryl Miller and Jeff Teague just intervened with some sobering reminders that altered the entire game.
But it doesn't make the statement false, and the reason why this statement has to be made is because of idiots like the A'ja Wilson fan base. Like, this statement should not have to be made. This is not beneficial in any way for basketball. The problem is this statement has to be made, and people are actually arguing that A'ja Wilson would be an NBA player. A'ja Wilson not only wouldn't be an NBA player, A'ja Wilson would not make any Division I college.
Allow me to explain this to you from the start, because this is a crazy story. From beginning to end, A.A. Wilson, who's dominating the WNBA at the moment, appeared on an NBA Players podcast. Josh Hart, if you're unfamiliar with A.A., we're discussing a person who has been smashing it in the WNBA on several occasions. Championship rings for the All-Star MVP award. She has everything except for what she stated on. This podcast is what everyone is interested in. Losing their thoughts.
It would be like 8 to 11. Me.
It's not that fun.
I get ball first.
You get ball first.
She does get ball first.
Not gonna get it back.
So-
But that's gonna be your time. Like, that's gonna be your period, which is fine. I'm not saying you're gonna go scoreless, but 8 to 11, I feel like it's pretty solid.
Wilson didn't say anything during this talk. Simply imply that she may go up against Hart. She stated bluntly that she could defeat him, not just merely barely in a one-on-one match. Win. She stated explicitly that she would win 8-11 for non-basketball players. That is a pretty game, not a close one. Cozy victory that she's forecasting.
So what do you think it'll be, Josh? Don't piss me off. Do not.
Let's now discuss Josh Hart for a moment as this situation. Hart isn't simply an end of the world. This man is a bench NBA player who's been an essential component of several excellent. He even played for the USA's NBA team. We're talking about the World Championship squad, regarding a person who has demonstrated the pinnacle of male excellence. Basketball.
If you would not get 11 points against Josh Hart if you played to 200. That's not a knock on A'ja Wilson. Josh Hart is a really good NBA player. Josh Hart was a starting 5 member on a USA World Championship team. Josh Hart would literally first step, blow by A'ja Wilson, jump in the air, and if there's no contact, dunk it, or if there is enough contact, he'd be high enough that's an open layup every single time. A'ja Wilson would put the ball on the floor, Josh Hart would tip it. A'ja Wilson, the only way she wouldn't get the ball stolen every single time she dribbled it in front of Josh Hart is if he tried to back down Josh Hart. And Josh Hart would stand there.
When Wilson asserted this, Hart's response was precious, and he burst out laughing, not in a cruel manner, but rather as he was shocked by what he was hearing. Yet, this is where things became heated. Wilson wasn't giving up, and she appeared to be dead. Said, "Don't irritate me," looking me in the eyes. She took this very seriously.
Like, the reality of the situation is like, just physically, athleticism wise. Because that's as important as anything in basketball. If skill was all that mattered, you'd see so many Filipinos in the NBA. But skill's not all that matters. Size and athleticism is what matters.
That's Jeff Teague joined the conversation, and the plot changes at this point. That no one anticipated. Teague, who has been an NBA All-Star, who is well-versed in the game, and decided that it was time to have some. Sincerely, he presented some facts. That left everyone speechless.
Like, it's simple biology, especially in a sport where it really matters, like basketball. But obviously people are attacking Jeff Teague, and this is like, people don't know about.
Teague's reaction was more than merely Wilson's assertion that he enlarged it to convey a more comprehensive idea regarding the enormous disparity between the NBA and he claimed that Wilson couldn't play in the WNBA, defeated every NBA player, not even the men occupying the end of the bench. Although it may sound harsh, Teague was just starting out. This is where Teague's analysis becomes rather. It's intriguing that he began to cry. The depth of the men's skill pool. He noted that basketball is the sport that most NBA bench players who don't even start. Only the men who hardly ever play. At that time, there were true monsters in high. The subjects we're discussing are school and college. Men who were losing games by 40 points, still averaging 20 in high school, university.
He made, and people are actually arguing that A'ja Wilson would be an NBA player. A'ja Wilson not only wouldn't be an NBA player, A'ja Wilson would not make any Division I college team. She is a 6'4" center. And that is she is a 6'4" center with no athleticism. If she played men's basketball, she is a 6'4" center with zero athleticism, who I'm not sure can dunk, and is a pretty poor three-point shooter.
Consider that for a moment. These guys aren't even that good. Sufficient to begin in the NBA, the men who might participate in a game for 5 or 10 minutes if they're fortunate, even if they were totally ruling on all fronts before making it to the experts, which is the degree of the athleticism and talent that we are discussing. However, Teague wasn't finished. He began dissecting the physical components of the game that most individuals don't consider, regarding the strength, speed, and these vertical leaps are not insignificant. The distinctions we are discussing, basic physical talents that bridge a gap that cannot be filled by skill alone. This isn't about disparaging bridge. Wilson's accomplishments show that she is an incredible basketball player who has participated in the WNBA, which is simply amazing. She's winning and smashing records, titles, and igniting a completely new players' generation. But when we begin discussing a matchup with the NBA players, we're about to enter a totally distinct discussion. Let's get started. Some details regarding what makes this. The speed is the first example of this mismatch. NBA players are more than just quick. They're talking at a breakneck speed, concerning men who are able to cover the whole duration of the court in a case involving. Their initial step is so swift that it takes seconds. They appear to be teleporting. Even the NBA big men move like guards. In contrast to the majority of other basketball players, followed by the strength component. Not only are NBA players tall, but they're exceptionally robust. Years of professional strength training in conjunction with elite genetics produce powerful athletes via contact that would prevent the majority of. This isn't simply about players on their tracks, about strength in the weight gym. It's about basketball strength that is functional, the capacity to keep everything under control while absorbing touch to complete defenders to maintain your role against a person attempting to transfer you there. Another important factor is the vertical leap. When NBA games are broadcast on television, viewers don't fully comprehend the height of these guys. We're talking about jumping. Guys with the ability to take quarters off the guys with the ability to jump on top of the backboard. So elevated they are able to rest their elbows on the rim. This goes beyond simply dunking. It impacts all facets of the game, from shooting past defenders in order to block shots to reclaim. These physical benefits produce a cascade appearance that affects the game in every way. When you're able to leap higher, move more quickly, and power through contact more readily, alters the way you can play defense, can produce shots that will allow you to finish at the rim. Is about more than just size or more powerful. It concerns how those physical benefits result in basketball skills, which leads us to another crucial point raised by Teague: the degree of rivalry these NBA players have encountered during the majority of these men's careers have been competing against elite teams since they were teens in a high school competition. College basketball championships. At every stage, they have required to demonstrate themselves in comparison to other top athletes. Consider the implications of that in terms of growth by the time these players go to the NBA after years of compete with other amazing athletes have had to cultivate their abilities when up against defenders who could physically equal them. They've had to discover how to score goals against opponents who could leap as high and move as quick and retort equally forcefully. That's Teague's assertion that Wilson couldn't be. He's not attempting to be any NBA player. Disrespectful. He's merely admitting the truth about the physical distances we're discussing. Even the most recent man on and he has spent his whole career on the NBA bench, competing with and surpassing other top male sportsmen to merit that position. And here's another thing to think about. The actual NBA game takes place at a very different intensity and tempo level. The players are playing at a faster tempo and more robust, and the error margin is every NBA player is quite little. Even the bench men must be capable of perform at that level merely to remain in. The league doesn't focus on skill and isolation. Wilson has a low basketball IQ. Her footwork is amazing on the charts. She has an elite comprehension of the game. Basketball, however, isn't played in a vacuum. Eventually, the physical facts of when the game starts, that's where these analogies dissect what you're thinking about. This is how it would be if skill were all that was important for basketball. Height and sportsmanship wouldn't be as important. Scouting and player considerations, development, but they are, because the best level of basketball is a mix of physical instruments, expertise, and the capacity to use those abilities against the hostility of the elite. This leads to the tale of Cheryl Miller, and believe me, this is where things start to get really intriguing. If you're unaware of Cheryl Miller, allowed me to include this viewpoint that we're discussing with you. Someone who many others believe to be the best. Her time as a women's basketball player, she would have been better, according to some, compared to Wilson if she had been a WNBA player. Miller has an extremely impressive resume. At USC, she was the best college basketball player, guided her group to several NCAA championships, and was setting new records. She was excellent in high school, left and right school, where she was given more than 250 offers of scholarships that are not a typo. 250. We are discussing a person who was essentially altering the women's basketball. However, even with all of her, a reality check was given to talent and supremacy that no one anticipated occurred when she made the decision to play against Reggie Miller, her younger brother. Yes, that NBA Hall of Famer Reggie Miller, the person who once set fire to the New York Knicks and is regarded as one of the best shooters ever. But the worst part is this. NBA Reggie, this wasn't even just. This was high school Reggie. Cheryl Reggie Miller, a freshman, returned home over Christmas vacation from college. Having faith in her abilities, she was dominant at the height of her abilities, college basketball, and believed she could manage her younger brother's narrative. She explains what transpired next in both. She was eye-opening and entertaining. Turn around to play downstairs, anticipating seeing her little brother, and, rather, she found herself gazing up at a person who had grown to 6 feet 7 inches. But, being the rival that she was, Cheryl still believed that she could take him. What followed has become a legend. Cheryl's tale in basketball circles went for a shot, most likely believing she had. Reggie didn't simply put this in the bag. He pinned it to prevent the shot. Thus, firmly, that Cheryl's response indicates you all the information you require regarding the gap that we are discussing, rather than, instead of trying, keep playing the game. Once more, Cheryl entered directly into the and sat down with her mother in the kitchen. Never engaged in one-on-one combat with Reggie. Once more, consider that one of the best female basketball players in history, and she was unable to cope with her high school. This narrative is wonderful, freshman brother. Shows what Jeff Teague was attempting to. To clarify A.A. Wilson's assertion, it's not about disregarding the rights of women, basketball, or making fun of someone's accomplishments. It's about recognizing the physical worlds that give rise to these significant holes in the game's playability. Let's examine the factors that create these analogies that are problematic in the first place. Factor: Wilson's height is 6 feet 4 inches, in which makes her a WNBA center, but even in men's basketball, the guard size. In men's collegiate basketball, she would be attempting to protect athletes that are not just taller, yet noticeably more powerful, and even more explosive than the Factor: Wilson's athleticism is an outstanding WNBA athlete, but the athletic specifications for men's. Simply put, basketball is different. Discussing a game in which even points, guards may easily dunk where players are, frequently leap over one another for moments where the game's speed is. On a further level, this leads us to one other thing that is frequently forgotten in these conversations: the evolution route for NBA athletes. By the time when someone gets to the NBA, they have been competing against male elite athletes. Throughout their lives, they have had to enhance their abilities when dealing with defenders who could be on par with or better than them. Physically, even men competing in lower-level professional leagues for men in the area globally would probably be too. Teague mentioned this in a very muscular way, mentioning the presence of men playing in second-tier leagues in a number of nations that may rule these due to the fact that they're more competent, yet because of the physical gap. This is something that is simply too important else to think about. The play style in the NBA game versus the WNBA is playing above the rim is more than merely. This is about how the danger of everything changes when you play above the rim. Regarding how the game is played, defenders must respond to shots as they disputed the method by which rebounds are grabbed. When players are able to, frequently, they obtain their hands above the. This is the reason Wilson claims that she might defeat Josh Hart 8-11, but it's not. Simply put, it's almost impossible. Hart's blend of strength, speed, and the capacity to jump would almost. Wilson is unable to obtain clean shots. Off on defense, she wouldn't be able to stop, preventing him from reaching the edge anytime he desired, but the problem is that none of. It should be noted that the WNBA is an fantastic league with outstanding athletes. Wilson is one of the people that is accomplishing amazing things. The greatest WNBA players ever, smashing records and advancing the restrictions on women's potential. NBA similarities to basketball. Players take no action to improve that legacy. The actual discussion ought to be about the WNBA's expansion and changing. The league is witnessing a rise in audience, increased media attention, and players who play at greater levels each year, such as Wilson, are motivating a new generation of athletes and contributing to create something unique. And let's discuss it. What makes Wilson exceptional on her own? She has amazing footwork. Her basketball IQ is quite high, altering the way the central position are the ones that are played in the WNBA. Things we ought to be concentrating on rather than imaginary games against the NBA players and the WNBA as a whole. The league has a distinct style. Stars have their own amazing moments. When we become enmeshed in these NBA analogies, we fail to recognize what makes basketball for women is unique in its own right. Consider how many incredible. We're not discussing stories because we are unable to go past these similarities. Might be talking about Wilson's game has changed the way she aids in growth, how she's motivating young people in the sport. Instead, we're discussing something gamers. It isn't important at all this time. In fact, the situation is hurting to basketball for women by emphasizing these analogies to NBA athletes that we are not hearing the true tale of how the game is changing and developing on its own. identity that the WNBA does not have to. Considered to be authentic in comparison to the NBA or thrilling the prospects for women's basketball is really intelligent. The quality of play continues to improve, the fan base continues to expand, and athletes like as Wilson is stretching the limits of what's possible is the topic of discussion. It is not appropriate for us to have a WNBA one-on-one, a star may defeat an NBA player. As we conclude our conversation, it's worthwhile keeping in mind something significant. There are various types of basketball, and each of them is valuable in their own unique way. There are differences between the NBA and WNBA, with various playing styles, stars, and other components that make. They are unique, therefore there's no need to compare. The following time, to enjoy both of them, someone brings up certain types of comparisons. Perhaps we could change the talk about what matters most. Honoring outstanding basketball in all its manifestations of recognizing players for what they contribute to their respective leagues and concentrating on the beneficial effects there affecting the entire sport. The basketball world is still in shock over this reality check in order to remain current. Imagine a more dramatic basketball game. Hit the like button and subscribe button. Leave your comments below with your opinions. Would you have been more adept at handling the truth compared to AEW?